Managing type 1 diabetes can be difficult and challenging. Today, a management revolution is underway that can help us all live happier and healthier lives. I'm Cliff Sherb, founder of Glucose Advisors. I will be sitting down with expert guests exploring topics in the advancements of the science of diabetes management, their personal type 1 diabetes stories, and details of the latest methods to help take control of T1D. We hope these stories inspire you to take control of your diabetes, health, and well-being, learning more about the advancements that exist to live a better life. For more episodes, visit our community at glucoseadvisors.com, learn from our team of advisors, and find out more about space available in our management programs. All right, welcome, Dave. Thanks for joining me on the Advisors podcast today.
Thanks, Cliff. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you. And I want to introduce you to our audience. Dave is the CEO of the T1D Exchange, a non-for-profit organization dedicated to improving the outcomes for the entire type 1 diabetes population. And Dave is an executive in diabetes device, digital health, remote monitoring, population health. He has over 25 years of healthcare industry experience, particularly in strategic planning, new product development, global product launches, marketing, analytics, and business development, and nearly 25 years living with type 1. So with that, Dave, welcome. So glad to have you.
Great. Yeah, and I need to update that because I hit the 25-year mark in mid-January. So that's just about, I hit more than halfway of my life there. So you can do the math and figure that out too. But
we don't want to take away any years and credit from you. Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah.
So Dave, I have so many great things I want to ask you on today's call. Tell me first out of the gate here, I got a great question for you. Who's your hero and someone who has inspired you the most in your life?
Oh, wow. Who's my hero?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm someone who's definitely very scientific. Even though I worked a lot in marketing, which is funny, I tended to gravitate towards working with all the engineers when I was in marketing, or the people in research and development, because they were very data-driven, fact-based, what have you. But I liked a little bit of the creative side as well on there. But if I were to say someone who I certainly admire as a figure, a historical figure, I'd say it's someone like Isaac Newton. People who have courage to kind of push evidence and science, even when there were others who were challenging them or didn't believe it. And sometimes that's part of what being I think a leader is being willing to, stand up for what you believe in or what's right. But certainly if you've gone through a rigorous process to get to what you believe, versus just throwing out, random hypotheses. So that's someone that I would say I certainly admire as a figure.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think people who, stay true to their core and follow their dreams and push it hard are certainly admirable. Absolutely. And tell me a little bit about, your work at the Exchange. So you took on the role there, and tell us what that's like. And I know you're working from home these days and spending time more so with the family. What's it look like, and what's the T1D Exchange all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I joined the board of T1D Exchange late in 2018, and I was familiar with the exchange because I've worked in the diabetes technology space. I've attended the scientific conferences, pretty much several of them a year since 2006, when I started working specifically in diabetes, and for an insulin pump company at the time. And so I had a vague familiarity with what they did, but when I was asked to consider joining the board and I started researching and talking to people there, I was pretty intrigued. Like this whole concept of let's try to really gather this real world evidence and depict here's what's taking place with people with type 1 out in the world. And there was information being gathered a couple different ways, directly from patients reporting their information through an online registry, but then also gathering information from diabetes centers that treat people with type 1. and gathering electronic medical record data that was all anonymous. But we would use that information to kind of portray here's how these patients are faring with hospitalizations and A1C levels and the products they're using and so forth. But also working with those centers collaboratively to actually try and improve things. So let's not just be the one that reports, hey, we wish that people were able to have an easier time with their glucose control. That's important, but let's actually try to take an active role in working with others to improve the glycemic control of people. So that's really kind of what attracted me. And, I ended up moving off the board to become the CEO in 2019. And, we were doing a lot of different things. The two I mentioned were really important. There were a few other things too. And we decided to prioritize and say, let's put more of our collective focus on this quality improvement. And then on this patient registry where we're gathering information directly from people and try to grow it, try to get more data. Let's think about connecting device data to that. And so there's a lot of interesting things that we're doing now with both. And we've grown the collaborative to 35 pediatric and adult diabetes centers. We were at 12 at the beginning of 2020. So we've been able to triple the size essentially in 15 months, a lot during COVID. So credit to our team and to the centers that we worked with, that we figured out how to do a lot of these things virtually, as everyone has, and everyone's had to. We've been remote like everyone else, pretty much, not everyone, but most, since March. I've been to Boston twice. So I live outside Philadelphia, but we're headquartered in downtown Boston. And I've been up there twice. I've worked out of my home office most of the time. And I used to be gone almost half the time from here. So we've been able to maintain our kind of effectiveness during all that time. And I've been able to hang out with my daughter, my youngest, who's 18 and going to be heading to college. So this last year, it kind of worked out that get a little extra home time.
Extra home time, yeah. That's nice before the nest is a bit more empty, yeah. So this is interesting. In the exchange and in this process and what you're describing to me, there is some data collection. I guess I didn't realize that with regards to like device data and things like that, or
yeah, that's a newer effort. So,
okay.
I've been a Dexcom user since 2007. I launched a product, an insulin pump with it integrated in Europe like 10 years ago. And so I've been on the CGM bandwagon for a long time. And just knowing some of the tools that are out there. And I've talked to companies that have apps where they were pulling data, over from Dexcom. And so I said, guys, there are ways that we could work to get this information. If people who use like a Clarity, app to send their data to the cloud so they can get reports provided to them from Dexcom, I know there's a way that we could figure out how to work this and get some of that information, if an individual were willing to do it, to pair their data with our registry account. So if somebody's in both, let's just connect them, and then we'll be able to really do some interesting research that kind of compare some of the information that we have and characterizes data that we have along with the data we pull in from this. So we've just started this year. It took a little while to get things figured out, but we've kind of gotten our first almost, I think, 1,000 people have kind of unified that data so that we could do analysis. And so
that's great.
We're doing some work looking at some specific things around hypoglycemia and what people perceive to be hypoglycemia or severe hypoglycemia, and what is the data showing, and some other things too around that project that we're doing that with working with a partner organization. So there's a lot more to come on that. We definitely want to grow that, and we want to talk to the other organizations. I want Medtronic and Abbott and even Senseonics on a lot to provide CGM. If we can get data from them in a way that's efficient and not a burden on them, but helps us do better research so we can kind of advance the cause. We're a not-for-profit focused on working with everybody to try and advance the cause. So I'm hopeful we can work with those other organizations too.
I found it really interesting, the approach, and I get these great emails from the exchange. I signed up some ways ago, and they're asking me different points of my diabetes day and in my lifestyle, and uh, every morning in my inbox, right, I get this nice email and it's asked me, and I kind of want to go in there and vote, and it's a nice way to contribute. And then there's I guess once a year, a little bit more in-depth kind of interview process to that as well. And then that kind of led me to think, okay, well, if we start putting together a lot more of this, diabetes hardcore information, i.e., the CGM and the insulin information, wow, you've got a really, really strong pool of data and things you can really do some greatness with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, you can think about it as like a funnel where at the highest level, we just start very loosely like, hey, if you just want to get some information, see some newsletters, some articles of interest, and a question of the day, you can sign up for that. And that's one simple thing. The next level down would be, hey, do you want to be a part of this longitudinal registry where we send you, 30 questions as a baseline? It's pretty simple. But in joining the registry, that information that you do can be combined with the other 8,000 people who have completed that questionnaire with us. And now we're able to, see some interesting things and trends there. But just think, we now do additional research sub-studies, we call them, because this is done under the auspices of a longitudinal research study. We take protect the data very seriously. We consent and make sure people know exactly what's happening with their information. We protect it. We won't sell that to people, but we will do pooled research where we can, help provide insights to others. And so that type of work we do. And so with that registry, we can tee up other research that might be interesting. So we know if somebody wants people who have been diagnosed in the last year and are on certain therapy, that we can put a research study to those people specifically and say, would you want to be a part of this? Here it is. You can sign up for this here. So let us do some of that work to help connect people to research opportunities. And that's part of our mission, is we want more people to be involved. We can accelerate the development of new products and treatments if we get more people involved. And our goal is, let's make people aware of it and do some of the work. And then they can decide, do I want to take this on? Yeah, maybe I do. But other times, no, I'm too busy. That's not interesting to me. So our idea is, let's just be that exchange where we can have some of these opportunities.
Right. Is there a goal number of people that need to be involved for this to be powerful? What's the end that you need to have to make this work?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're actually kind of embarking on doing our longer term strategy right now. We've been very much focused on the next year. Here are the things we want to accomplish in 2019 and 2020, and now in 2021. But now we're embarking on we have that 21 set. Let's think about to 2025. How large do we need to or want to get the registry? I know it's not the current 8,000 people have completed and 12,000 have given us, kind of their email addresses and said, yes, they want to, and we're working through getting them to finish. That's not our end game, right? There are 1.6 million people with type 1, and of all the different cuts and slices and things that we want to do, the bigger we can make that overall registry, now I can start doing specific things with subsets that are deep and rich. I'm really excited about doing surveys around diabetes treatment satisfaction questionnaire. There's a validated tool that you can do. And so let's run that and see how people on all kinds of different treatments are feeling about what they're using and how satisfied they are with that. Diabetes distress and fear of hypoglycemia. There are things that you could do on there, but there's also other stuff that's around the device data, and people on these types of devices have, we find out some really interesting things, and we have a lot of ideas that we want to go test. But certainly as we get our numbers up, I'd get it to 50,000 people. That's still 3% of the type 1 population in the US. Yeah. So I want to get our footprint as big as possible, because the research that's on, there are a lot of innovative treatments coming down the line, and we get contacted all the time by people. Can you help us recruit? Even if it's a study on telemedicine, we get 1,000 people. I have a new adhesive. Can you help us? We'll help get the word out. And there are a lot of people willing to help and willing to participate. We just want to be the connector.
Got it. That's awesome. So how do you find ways to motivate these T1Ds and find them in the community? And you address the privacy concerns. That hit that perfectly. But yeah, how do you find folks and get them excited? I mean, I certainly as a type 1 feel compelled to do it, to help, and I feel like there's a band of arm in arm with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, I wish I could just kind of travel around and find everybody easily and pop on the shoulder and say, look, here's what we're trying to do. Would you want to be a part of this? Obviously, we use social media channels. We've had a really growing kind of emphasis on leveraging different channels to try and find people, and to give them the kind of the offer here. Hey, can you please join? And here's what we can help do. And here's what you'll be doing for the community. And, it's, people hear the term registry. It's not that obvious what that means. I mean, 5 years ago, if you'd asked me what that meant, I'd have a different definition than, now. But the channels that we've been using, leveraging others who are already talking to people. So there are a lot of influencers, a lot of Instagram, influencers, and people that are putting the word out to their followers. We've worked with organizations like Beyond Type 1 and others to kind of get the word out. Those are some of the, yes, that's pretty obvious to people. But what we're trying to do now, we have a tool where we're reaching people with really small followings who just might be a little unique area and certain geography, and they happen to have their group of 30 people that they talk to. And guess what? They're able to help us get the word out, and we get 10 or 15 of them to join the registry. There's a lot of that taking place now, and we're trying to really diversify and get out there. Particularly in the Black community and the Hispanic community, we've got some specific kind of influencers, and we've got some organizations we've talked to that can help us, get that out, give us input into how we can kind of make the case in a better way than maybe we have in the past. So that's been a big part of our effort, and our marketing team is very focused on that, and they're talking to a lot of people, and we're using a tool to help us find people who have followings online that are not the obvious ones that you find when you just, do your quick searches. So that's been a part of it.
Interesting. So now I guess COVID-19 has kind of thrown all of a wrench in all of this a bit. And you guys also have some things that you're doing around that and how it's affecting us with type 1. And there's your perfect, let's get some information on that. And how can we address that? Where does that stand with you guys, and how is that working out?
Yeah. So last year, we have an MD, MPH, Dr. Osagi Ebekosian, who runs our quality improvement and collaborative and population health work that we do. And he approached me and said, hey, I've been talking to some of the centers that we work with, and we're thinking we need to fill this knowledge gap that exists. Like in the beginning, oh my God, diabetes it kills you with COVID. And there was a lot of misinformation about, wait, is that type 1 or type 2? And some early data from China and Italy says this, but is that really true? And so we quickly mobilized and kicked off a study last April to look at how are people with type 1 contracting COVID? How are they presenting with symptoms? How is it progressing? Are they getting hospitalized? And are they having are they getting DKA? And that work, we started with the centers in our collaborative at the time, which was a smaller number. I think we were in the 15 to 20. But then we got another 40 to 50 centers around the country to join in and say, yes, I will fill out information. I will send you my case reports I'll go through the EMR at our center. And anytime we get a COVID case with type 1, we'll send it to you with these questions answered. So they did that, and we compiled that information. And we're still actually collecting data now. We thought we'd be done. Unfortunately, it went past 2020. And so we found things out about the symptoms that present. I think how it progressed. And the takeaway is, the most important takeaway, if you keep your blood sugar in good control, COVID is much less of an issue if you get it.
Yeah.
So it might be you might have an increased risk of contracting COVID, but if you do, and you keep your blood sugar in control, and we looked at below 7%, 7 to 9% for A1C, and then above 9%. And not surprisingly, those who had A1Cs above 9% had a much tougher time, much more hospitalization, higher hospitalization rate, more DKA. But what we also found that was troubling was that there were disparities in that, and really related to device use. So people who use CGM and pumps did much better, had better blood sugar control, and had fewer hospitalizations, less DKA. People of color used devices much less in our analysis.
Mhm.
And as a result, they had, much higher rates of DKA and hospitalization, 3 to 4 times as much for Hispanics. I think we're 3.1, and blacks were 4 times as likely
Wow.
to have that. So that was an eye opener. We knew disparities existed, but seeing it in COVID and
Yeah.
that tie to the device use specifically. So what are we doing? Well, we're actually literally finalizing a contract with one company right now to help sponsor a project where we go target device disparities, the usage, the utilization differences. So we're going to look at a few centers in our collaborative, and we're going to pilot some training, and we're going to monitor usage, device prescribing, and look at some other things that can be done from a kind of a very specific test and measure along the way, over approximately a 1 year time frame, and see if we can reduce those disparities. And so that's one of the beauties of the quality improvement collaborative, is what they essentially do as a matter of business on any issue is, let's go and develop interventions based off evidence. Let's go test those interventions. We'll be measuring it routinely, tweak it if it's not working as well as we thought, and then kind of monitor that progress. And we've done that for CGM and pump use in general, for depression screening, for
Wow.
sick day management. We have a lot of things that we've done already. So we have an engine that we can plug into.
It's kind of wild how you can shine a spotlight on any particular area, and now that spotlight's almost getting more intense, and you can shine it in a better way on that what you're looking at. And I guess when you're looking at these things, is there anything that you've ever been investigating? And you're saying, "Wow, I can't believe that was a surprising outcome. I didn't expect that." I mean, in throughout the years.
Yeah. Well, one of the side efforts we did utilizing this infrastructure, just like COVID, is we did a telemedicine um, study to look at how, I think we had 19 or 20 centers participate in that. How was telemedicine being used during this pandemic? And what were some of those interesting characteristics? So you start thinking about um, how often it was being used. So quickly you see this massive drop from, or change in complexion of in-person visits to telehealth visits really quickly. I was surprised how quickly some of these centers were able to pivot
Hmm.
and implement telehealth as quickly as they did. And so you did see things like, wow, data wasn't made available to them for the visits as much as I would have expected in 2021.
Right.
So a lot of missing A1Cs, which you can understand. People weren't going to a lab. They weren't going to the center and getting their blood work there for a visit. They were staying at home. But you would hope that there would have been more remote uploading of data. And there was a fair amount, but there were a lot of challenges. And I was involved 10 years ago in kind of rolling out solutions to do a better job of uploading pump and CGM data. And you just think 10 years later in 21, I was thinking that we would have been further along in having this passive upload of data, right? So
Right.
I think people that use CGM and they set things up, you can have that passive upload to the cloud, but that's just not happening enough, and certainly not enough with the pumps and smart pens. Getting that information, making it available so a clinician can look at it and say, okay, now I can troubleshoot. I can look for lows. I can look for patterns. I can try to adjust things. That kind of adjustment has been going on for 20 years with data. We used to
Right.
plug in a computer with bad download programs. Then we moved and evolved to the cloud, but it's not being used enough. So
Right.
certainly the telemedicine survey definitely highlighted some of that we still have a lot of work to go. But I think everyone's talking about it now, and everyone's eyes have been open to the potential of virtual care and the ability to get some of this data sent from home, so that people that know a lot about this can do it and help individuals with type 1, fix their
Yeah.
dosing.
Telehealth is it's just so new in the expanse that we're seeing it now. It makes me laugh. I think there was a plastic surgeon who was calling in to his traffic court violation, and he he was operating on a patient, and the judge said, "Hey, we got to stop this. You can't operate on somebody while we're doing your traffic court." But I do think that as we liberalize data and as we make things more fluid in the system, that we'll be able to solve problems much more rapidly. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And look, I, data is the key, and there are a lot of things around compassion and support that have to be there for people with type 1, without a doubt. But I tend to put more of my focus on the data side of things, right? I was on the wrong settings for the first 10 years of my diabetes life. And if someone had just bothered to do a little bit of analysis, they could have quickly realized that my settings were wrong. And I think you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we first, had this intro discussion. I, I had the best health insurance. I worked for a great company. I had all kinds of education. I've got Ivy League degrees. It didn't matter. I didn't know that I was on the wrong settings. I couldn't figure it out myself.
Yeah.
I joined a pump company in 2006, and I was reading presentations to come up to speed. And I realized, wait a minute, why would I be on this 1:25 correction factor and 1:15 insulin to carb ratio given my weight and my average daily dose? That this doesn't make sense. I just changed the settings on the fly, and I got my first sub 7 A1C. I had been in the low to mid sevens and could never crack 7, and I was just sitting there a little frustrated. And then this little change, I dropped 0.4%, 6.8. And I said, great, but why the hell didn't someone tell me this sooner? But being on the pump and having that data, total daily dose was being calculated. It was easy to get an average. I had never done that before. I never thought about it. So as much as I'm mired in data and I'm very, kind of focused on certain things, I flew 10 years not having the best control. And, I was busy with life, and I just wasn't something that I ever even knew that was an issue. I just thought for some reason there was something I wasn't doing right, but I didn't know what it was.
We see that all the time. People coming into our programs saying, I just wish I had known this. Why didn't somebody share this with me? Why didn't this happen? And it's, we're working on that. We got to fix that problem.
Absolutely. And that's often the same response that people get when they start on an insulin pump or they start CGM. It might take a few days. You got to get used to it's a change in behavior and think you're a little off balance. But then after a few days, you start to see some of the benefits kicking in, and you go, why didn't I do this sooner?
Yeah.
And that's what I felt on the pump. I was resistant. I had a friend always trying to tell me who was type 1, and her husband worked at a company that was type 1 making a pump. And I'm like, all right, I'll just relax. I'm fine. I'm busy. I play basketball on the weekends. I'm going to wear a pump when I play. I know, just leave me alone. And then once I started, I'm like, why didn't I do this sooner? This isn't such a big deal. But we would do market research with people that started on our pump, and that was like the overwhelming consistent response.
Wow.
All these reasons that you think it's going to be worse than it is, and then you try it, and once you dive in the pool, you go, oh, the water's not that cold. Oh yeah, it's that similar experience. So
yeah, I had the same thing. I fought the pump for a long time because I had really figured out what I felt was the right way to do something exactly. And and this was when I was much younger, a little bit more vain about wearing a pump back then. And then I said, to heck with vanity. It's all about performance. And I felt a heck of a lot better once I got on a pump. And I mean, the things you could do with a pump were tremendous. So I totally get that. So, you've had such a extensive career in diabetes. I'm just curious, what would you share with our community and our audience about things that, they could do to manage their type 1 diabetes better? If there was like one major thing you'd say, hey, do this, definitely do this, or,
Honestly, like I brought up this dosing thing as an example. I understand that people, certainly depending on their age and their insulin sensitivity, like people cannot exactly conform to an average, right? There are people that are over here and people over there, particularly adolescents who are growing. I mean, I was diagnosed at 24, so I feel lucky in a way that I didn't go through growth spurts and deal with some of the things that hormone changes and whatnot that a lot of these parents and kids have to deal with. I really do. I was a wrestler in college, like the stupid things I did with eating and not eating and whatnot. Like I'm thankful. I feel lucky. I got to do a lot of that in an easier fashion. I actually know a few people that wrestle with type 1, and it's a little extra effort. There are things they have to do. But that aspect of like the weight and the dosing and these formulas, the rule of 17 or 1800 and 450, 500 that we talked about, that I won't bore people with algebra here on the thing, but if people can get their dosing set then you can go tackle all these other things. But so many people are on the wrong amount of insulin for the carbohydrates they take and the wrong amount to correct their blood sugar. And
Yeah.
like I was overcorrecting and underdosing for food, just constantly, boom, 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 for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I talk to people, and I will literally ask people all the time, how much do you take a day? I'm just curious. And for an adult, um, you know, an average is about half their weight in kilograms. And if you do the math and you figure it out, I am like exactly to the T. And I have good blood sugar control. You know, my A1C is below target, and I fall exactly on that. Now, that could just be coincidence. I'm lucky that I fall to that formula. I do believe, based off data I've looked at, that there are a lot of people who would benefit if they got closer to that average. They may not come right at it,
Yeah.
but if they got a little closer, they probably, then you can go and deal with all these other little issues that come and hit you with exercise and illness and your menstrual cycle if you're a female and all these things that throw curveballs at you. But if you're throwing curveballs off you're on your basal being set is a certain, that's obviously one that's related to your weight as well. But that dosing you have to get that kind of closer to the ideal. If you don't, it just makes it so much better. So
setting that baseline is just so critical. And, we even, help people find multiple baselines, and that allows them to be more flexible in their lifestyles. But it's certainly a process and an education that, we need to help the community find. And I'm really excited with everything that you're telling me that the exchange is doing. What would you say you see things happening in the next 5 to 10 years? What would you want to see happen for the diabetes community?
yeah, I mean, it is so awesome what's taking place right now. Honestly, like I feel like since I've been in the industry 15 years, you're always hearing about all this incredible innovation that's coming. And and I won't get into the whole debate or discussion about the cure and when is it coming. What I do see, obviously, a lot more people now are using automated control systems, and I worked on one back at J&J, and I remember thinking, I do a pretty good job. There's no way these systems are going to be able to anticipate, like, I know what I'm going to eat. I know what I'm going to, I can do things ahead of time that it can't, right? But when you're sleeping, what these systems do at night, there's no way I can compete with that, right? So that's a first thing. But I look at, like, we're working with organizations developing beta cell replacement therapies, biologics to give to people if they're have the antibodies and it looks likely that they may be developing type 1 within a few years. There's amazing things taking place, and we're actually trying to help characterize what's going on with people currently, help recruiting for some of these products. But it's amazing what's going on. So with that, and with the fact that there's now a little better engine, the good work that JDRF has done with the T1D fund, and the T1D fund funding some interesting things and really going after this, I feel like now the whole investment community is paying a little more attention to type 1 than they did 10 years ago. It did not feel like that when you looked at some of the things. You'd always hear about some mouse in a lab that got cured of type 1. The non-obese diabetic mouse was cured for the 88th time.
Yes. I remember that mouse.
Yes, that mouse is incredible. That mouse has been cured so many times.
I wanted to be that mouse.
Too facetious, but I'm like, all right, can we bring that over to humans, please? But it's so preventing people from even developing type 1 or delaying the need to go on insulin for a number of years. Great. But actually for people that have it, to be able to come in a way to replace beta cells, but then protect them so that the body doesn't attack those as well, and you get back to the same spot. There's a lot of great work being done by a number of companies at different levels. So it was a lot more hype 10 years ago. I feel like the progress that's been made, it's been slower than we'd all like, but wow, I feel actually fortunate that I'm in this intersection where I get to see some of this and hear about it from these companies and see what role we can play to help while we're sitting there and kind of, let's drive real world improvement of care. And like, there's a lot of other stuff we got to be dealing with now, but I'm really encouraged by what I see coming. So I think that's awesome.
That is awesome. I agree with you. I feel like we kind of landed on the moon here most recently with diabetes compared to when I was diagnosed at 9 and I'm now 42, I said, oh, you're going to be cured in your lifetime. And I'm like, Still hanging on for that. But I do think we landed on the moon, and the next step is we're going to land on Mars with some of the stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, I have an appreciation, having worked in pharmaceuticals and medical devices, being the commercial guy, usually in the new product world, like while we were developing things, sometimes all the way at the very beginning, right? Like there's a type 2 diabetes drug, Invokana, that launched in like 2011, I think. I was at J&J in 2001 on the pharma side when I said, hey, you guys working on anything in diabetes? Because I just joined and I'd love to work in something with diabetes. They go, well, we have this thing that we're working on, but it's not going to launch for another 10, 11 years. And like 10, 11 years, oh my gosh. But then when you realize the process of what has to take place, and I sit there and watch, I have some empathy for meeting FDA requirements and answering all the questions you need to for safety, so you don't bring out something that causes a problem after you didn't find it out until after the fact when it launched. That's a huge issue. So, I really do appreciate that. That said,
Right.
Some of the reason that things take a long time is that there wasn't enough money, or people made mistakes in doing the work they did, or they could have. There's always room for improvement, whatever we do. So there's consumer demand, and we're all saying do it faster, do it better, and that's a good pressure to put on these companies, without a doubt. But it has gotten to a much better place than it was, and I applaud those working on it, and I'm glad a lot of us who work in the industry have type 1, have relatives. I've got a nephew with type 1. I'm really motivated to work in this. But as I tell people at my T1D exchange, thank you to those of you who don't have a direct connection or impact, and you decided to take your skills and experience and come help us and come apply those to type 1 diabetes. Like, thank you. I say that to everybody in the industry. I don't think we say that enough. And I know people in oncology, my wife works in the oncology space. Lots of people in oncology work there because they've been directly impacted. Cancer affects most of us, but there are some who don't, and they just said, this is such a problem. It's such an unmet need. Let's go tackle it. And I think there's a lot of similarities there in the type 1 diabetes space as in the oncology space.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, we're going to be definitely sending our community as much as we can over to you guys, and trying to keep expanding that registry, get it bigger, swell it up, and try to keep pumping that innovation. We're all benefiting from it, and it's clear that it's working. So, keep up the great work over there. Is there a way that you want folks to get involved? What's the best step for them?
Yeah. So actually, T1dregistry.org. or T1D Exchange, you can go to our website, our main website, and then there we have all the information on the registry there. But it's literally, the initial ask is that you go there and fill out some questions that take 10 minutes, 15 tops. And then, we ask you to consent, and we explain what we do. Literally, we are taking your information, putting it together, and trying to turn it into knowledge there. And the more people participate and they fill out a survey, they agree to connect their diabetes, CGM device, and there'll be other things that, down the line. Like we can do so much with rolling that up and turning that into something powerful, but we need people to contribute. And look, we need all people to contribute. Like, we are very kind of the people that first join and do this tend to be more similar, and we want to get more diversity, so we're doing our part to reach out to others. But if people can go and sign up there and be a part of our registry, that's the biggest thing that we could do to start.
Awesome. Well, listen, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your story and everything that you're doing with the exchange. So good luck to you, and have a wonderful rest of your day over there. But thanks for being on.
Yeah, no, Cliff, thanks for having me, and especially those watching, given it's March Madness and NCAA wrestling is going on at the same time. I know not as many are into that, but there's a lot going on. So after this, it's almost 5 here. I'm going to go watch some of that. So, but awesome. I appreciate you letting me come on and talk about things, and look forward to continuing our discussions in the future.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care, Cliff.
Too. Thanks for listening to the Glucose Advisors podcast. For more episodes, visit our community at glucoseadvisors.com. learn from our team of advisors, and find out more about space available in our programs. Head on over to Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you find your podcast to rate, subscribe, or leave a review. Until next time, take control, stay inspired, and live a better life with T1D.